I am also recording.
5,
5,
4,
4,
3,
3,
2,
2,
1, 1,
1.
1.
Play the jingle.
Pete and Steven. Pete and Steven. Pete and Steven. Pete and Steven. This is Pete and Steve Waste Your Time. And this is where we're gonna put that Japanese guitar, and it'll be like bing. It's like a Japan special.
Japan special.
Japan.
I'll just whisper that like 5 times right now. We could just piece our things
Perfect.
together. All right, here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
Just start whispering now. Japan special. Japan special. Japan special. Japan special. Japan special.
So how'd you like Japan, Steven?
I hate America. No, I'm kidding. Please don't loop that. Hate America. Hate America. Hate America. Hate America. Hate America. Honestly, I enjoyed it so much that coming back has been really hard to adjust.
It's so weird. It's the same thing for us.
Yeah. I mean, to the point where I cooked dinner the second night I was home, and I threw my dinner out.
Yeah.
Like, the flavors weren't right. Everything felt, not unclean. What's the word? Processed.
It's different. Yeah. It's definitely the food
And I
quality
was
is
just
so
pissed.
fucking high, and it's so obvious. And it comes
Yeah.
from like unexpected spots, because even the restaurants, like, they have really great food, right? And the food's fucking fantastic. But you can go to a 7-Eleven and have as decent of a meal as, like, say, a cheap Japanese restaurant, which surpasses like any American version. You know, like
Everything.
your Japanese sort of ramen place out here that's $20 a bowl. It has nothing on the $10, maybe even less cheaper bowls than that in Japan, which is, kind of a given. I would give them that. But their 7-Eleven shit, like even their instant ramen is just notches above. But it's crazy because we had the same thing. And I always kind of cringe on vacations with my mom, because my mom does the whole, I don't want to go home yet. We have to go back kind of thing. And I'm always usually at that point like, yeah, I'm ready to go. It's good to come
I
back.
was too. 100%.
And so I'll cringe and say, yeah, I mean, like, I get what she's saying, but no, like, I'm ready to go kind of thing. But this one, I had a really hard time wanting to come back, because I knew, like, I had to go back to work. We had the pets at home, yada, yada, yada.
Oh, that's it. I was a little more. I was ready. I was pretty tired by the last day, but
Yeah.
the extra day I was there after you guys left, I meandered a lot,
Yeah.
which probably tired me out. But I get you. I mean, even the air quality. I don't think I had allergy issues at all in Japan. The minute I landed in America, it came back.
Yeah.
It all came back.
Yep. And
And I just was pissed.
yeah, it's been hard adjusting back. And, normally because we've done Asia trips before, my wife and I. And when we come back, we can kind of reset ourselves, but for some reason it's just nagging me. And I think part of it is willingness. I just don't want to be back.
The humdrum life of America is just not the same as I mean, even the culture, right? I think I was talking to you while we were over there, where it kind of felt like people don't cook at home there.
Yeah.
The lifestyle is really to go to work, you eat, and then you go back to your place afterwards. But
Right. And
it was always bumping. There was always people
there's
out
always
doing
somebody
stuff
out.
on the streets.
You could get food as accessible as a 7-Eleven, and those places are everywhere. 7-Elevens, Lawson's, Family Marts. There's another place we didn't go to called Daily Yamasaki, which was everywhere too. But all of them have the same sort of thing, food, snacks. But when I say food, what you might picture is like gas station hot dog if you're from America. But I'm talking about like several different noodles dishes, instant noodles, rice dishes, and they're open 24/7. And the chicken. Don't let me forget the chicken. The chicken is killer.
Yeah.
For a gas station. But the thing is it's cheap too. And I didn't really expect that. And it occurred to me while we were out there that if you had a place in Japan, and I don't want to hype anything up and say like, their work culture is as like seems as like, what do you call it? Like servile, as we put out there, like they're constantly working or stuff like that. But if you were even working a normal schedule, like a 9 to 5 out here, you might not want to go home and cook. There are plenty of people, including me, that don't want to, right? Yeah. But you can go get a $5 bowl of pretty decent food at 7-Eleven. Like, why would you cook at home? You know? You could eat so cheaply, and it's still pretty fucking decent, and the quality's pretty high. So if we're talking about high points of the trip, which we could summarize, I'd say by far the food stood out. It's not only just delicious, but inexpensive and available.
100%. And even, I'm not a fish eater. I found fish I like in Japan. I don't think I would find that here.
Yeah, it's different. We had some salmon at Tsukiji, and so Tsukiji is the famous fish market in Tokyo. And we had salmon, and we tasted it, and it tasted totally different from salmon we're used to at home, which is in the PNW. And so the debate between us is now, PNW is probably the best spot in the United States to get it outside of like Alaska directly. But the quality of the fish in Japan is so high, we have this existential crisis going now where it's not totally clear what the real salmon taste is supposed to be. Is it what we had in Japan, which was fantastic, but distinct from what you'd have in the PNW? Or is it from like the PNW Alaska, where it's sort of renowned as one of our big products, it's one of our big foods?
Now, I don't know much about salmon, but is there a Japanese salmon versus a PNW salmon? Like, are they different breeds?
That's where my sort of knowledge runs out, because I was under the
otherwise,
impression...
imagine that migration, right? I mean, that spawning season must have been crazy. So I'm curious if it's a different type of salmon. That's why.
Really more sort of common sense guessing than anything else at this point. But the salmon do live in the ocean for a fair amount of their lives, so they go back to, say, Alaska and the rivers there. They all go back to Alaska, so that makes America and the PNW like a prime spot for salmon. But it doesn't mean they're not in the ocean and get as far as Japan. I honestly don't know. But that's really my question, is what I've been getting my entire life, including my last, 10-ish years up here.
Well, it turns out salmon fishing and salmon in Japan is real convoluted. So, we don't know what we're talking about. Enjoy the episode.
Hey, look, I can dance.
No, you're not.
Is that what it's supposed to be? Point being, the quality is was extremely high and fantastic.
Yeah.
And that existed.
I agree.
It existed at every level, from a gas station to like a normal sit-down place to a fancier, maybe a little bit more pricey place. Just everywhere. So food. Top highlight.
Now, that being said, though, I feel like the convenience stores chicken, it was good, but I wouldn't put it that much higher than like a fast food chicken nugget. But that's still really good for a convenience store.
Pretty
don't
good,
get it wrong.
Pretty good considering it's less than $1. Because I'm with you.
Exactly.
It's probably comparable to like, it's the chicken was good. I would say it's comparable to what you could get like a fast food nugget place. It's definitely different than say KFC, Popeyes, something like that.
Right.
But they could be comparable. The point is if you went in and
100%.
bought a 2-piece meal at KFC, that's $5, and that might be on the cheaper end of things. That might be boomer history prices there.
Right.
It's 120, 130 yen for a solid brick of chicken at these Japanese convenience stores, which rounds out to $1. You could gulf down 5 of those, it would be less than $5.
Yeah, 100%. But I know that like people online were, they take a bite and they have like this orgasmic face on it. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm not sure it's worth that. My mouth was not like salivating thinking about the convenience store chicken, but it was good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the end all be all for chicken.
Yeah.
But my God, for a convenience store chicken, it was high quality.
100%.
Better than a McDonald's nugget.
So food quality up there.
I just want to talk about Monkey Park for a second. Like,
go for it. Monkey Park was awesome.
Dude, first off, going up the mountain, awesome. I will
hard
say,
hike, but worth it.
Never listen to me on what way to go again.
I think we made the right decision, honestly.
I did too. I enjoyed it.
We went up the exit. Nobody really said anything. No one gave us the stank eye or nothing. And honestly, this is I'll cop to this because I've done this. When you're kind of, hefty like I am, and you're gonna go through an exertion, like, hey, this is gonna be hard. You want it over as quick as possible. So if that means you're going to have to walk vertically up a cliff for
go the fast way,
10, 15 minutes shorter than taking the nearly vertical route, I'm going to go for the other one. It's harder, 100%. But I'll be through it faster. But
and it worked
at the same time. It worked out. At the same time, wasn't so easy. But yes, Monkey Park.
I found it so cool. So we get up to Monkey Park, and they're wandering around, and I think what I liked the most is the idea that when you feed them, you have to go in the cage. They're not in cages. They're wild monkeys. They're like, you're going to put your butt in a cage, because if you don't, they're going to attack you and take all the food. So you go in there, and honestly, we talk about the politeness of the Japanese. Let's talk about the politeness of the monkeys.
Yep.
They kindly went over there with their hands. I think the only impolite one is we saw the I want to say the patriarch come by and just kind of squish a baby.
They scare each other away. Yep. Yeah. Just kind of fling each other out of the way to get to the food.
So that was pretty funny. And then we go outside. There's all these signs of like what not to do. Like don't stare at the monkey. Don't
smile.
Go really close to it.
Don't get into it. Yep.
And immediately I see a white woman. And I don't know if it's only white women, but this is something I see, and I'm sorry for people out there. It's not all white women, but that's who I always see do this. And every white woman thinks they're a druid or one with animals. And they just ignore the signs. They just have this mental capacity like, oh, no, I'm one with nature. The monkey likes me. And she's sitting there with this camera in the monkey's face, and the monkey looks pissed. And there's signs everywhere saying, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't like it.
Yep.
And even the Japanese guy's like, please stay away from the monkey.
Please don't do that.
And she gets closer, and then I see her hand start to go out. And I'm thinking, this woman really thinks she's going to tame the monkey. Unfortunately, she did bring her arm back because the monkey showed its teeth. And I guess her animal handling check rolled like a crit fail.
It was... There was a news video way back in the day where they kind of simulated that kind of like drunk, I don't want to say drunk, but kind of like obnoxious American tourist in France. Yeah. And the conclusion they came to, which I think is true, which is it's not that the French weren't offended, and it wasn't that the French, like that. It was that they were readily able to laugh at it because it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And actually what they found out is other Americans were more critical of the appearance that there were Americans out there acting like jackasses and being obnoxious. And I'm not saying all white people come from America, but I'm always very concerned about when I see people that I'm going to just presuppose are American doing things that I think are dumb. And I'm not going to say that doesn't apply to everybody equally, because it does. I'll be very critical of everybody if you give me the opportunity. But
yeah.
There was something about Monkey Park, and I've seen it in a lot of other places in Japan, especially the temples and shit like that, where it was like they tell you not to do certain things, you participate in them, you make yourself the main character, and it's just like you just look like a fool. You just look like a fool, then you're just kind of doing whatever you want for the expense of anything else. But yes, Monkey Park was a great example of that, because all the way up the fucking trail, they're like, put your jacket on or in your backpack. Put your cell phone away. Don't put anything in their fucking face. They'll try to take things from you. Yada, yada, yada. And as soon as we get up there, there's people like fucking trying to do like close-ups with the monkeys. And it's just like, this is a bad idea. Yeah. This is a terrible idea.
And it's just, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's just an American thing or a touristy thing, but I see it every time.
Yeah. And I feel worse for the Monkey Park people, because they're sitting there going like, well, we run this legit attraction. Sure, maybe it's touristy and it brings a lot of tourists, but they come up, they want to have a good time. But if they get hurt, it looks bad on us, right? That's why we have all the signs out there saying like the monkeys are going to bite you. They're going to bite you.
These are wild animals. These are not tamed creatures.
Yeah. So,
anyways.
But on their heads be it, hopefully, people that participate in stupid shit, man.
Darwin Awards.
The other thing, and this is sort of obligatory, and this is going to be obvious, is the public trans system. Can we just quick hand? Oh, where's my applause?
There's my sounds.
You can literally go anywhere on public transit in Japan, and it's all fairly accessible.
Yeah.
And not only is it accessible, but it's clean. And for anyone in the U.S. where public trans does exist, which is primarily just the big cities and nowhere else, you could come to appreciate that it's a country where they didn't destroy their trains or graffiti or anything like that. And I'm not saying everywhere in Japan is going to be like spotless and clean, but I am saying the public trans is remarkably clean.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I've been to Chicago, I've been to San Fran, I've been to some in New York with our public transportation, and in comparison, it's just apples and oranges almost. It's so different.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of just talking on a train.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's not good. You know, and I was telling somebody the other day where Japan in general was quiet.
Yeah.
For how busy it was. I mean, it was busier than any city I've ever been to, and yet it was still quieter than most cities.
Yep. I'm with you.
Very impressed.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with that. As an introvert, it was nice.
Yeah. Well, I think it went both ways because I was weirdly anxious because when we got off the flight, and part of it was I was tired, so I was hyper-focusing anyways. But we got off the plane, we got on a train in Tokyo, and it's dead quiet. And my wife and I are just like, wow, this is crazy. It's so fucking quiet. No one's talking. No one's on their phone. There's nothing, like, there's no music. There's not that one guy who's watching Netflix on his fucking phone or something like that. And it gets to the point where you're just like so fucking like focused on yourself and just like, am I breathing too loud? Am I weak? Because I was so concerned because I had like a fucking like, my thighs clamped tight on my suitcase, and I was just sitting there being like, this thing better not fucking slip away from me. I'll be so embarrassed, kind of thing. But
see, I had the opposite when we landed in America. I had the overstimulation immediately in Denver Airport.
Sure.
And just I almost couldn't handle it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot how loud everything is.
Night and fucking day. And the cleanliness really stands out. But the other part about public trans is it is literally on time every time. And I go back to San Diego, where the San Diego trolley exists. And the trolley is kind of like a fun word for it because it's really a light rail. You know what I mean? It's closer to a subway.
100%.
But the joke on the subway, or on the trolley in San Diego, is there's a schedule, and I put that in air quotes, there's a schedule. But it doesn't really mean it's going to show up on that time. It generally hits around there, and it'll generally hit, it stops. On a good day. On a bad day where there's an event, say like the world's #1 comic convention, the trolleys the schedule is a joke. The schedule is saying they're going to run trolleys, stand here to find them. And that's pretty much it.
And, with that in mind, I find it so fascinating that America, for their systems like this, we're very lenient of getting on, getting off, you'll get on when you get on. Japan, it wasn't forced necessarily, but there was an expectation that you get on, you find your spot, you stand.
Yep.
You don't saunter around.
Nope.
You don't look for that perfect spot. You get on and you squish in and you get it going.
That's right. Yeah.
And what a difference.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like their culture with it works so well.
And never mind that pretty much everybody was automatically putting like their backpacks in front of them because you don't inadvertently smack someone with your backpack. Or you put it between your legs so it's not taking up room from somebody else. And I mean, it goes back and forth because I think what we'll get to towards the end of this episode is kind of how these quote unquote rules get overhyped on YouTube and how it isn't exactly true. But there was something that I do want to say. There was something more of like, would you call it like a sensitivity, a sympathy for other people? How you taking up all this room with your bag or something is going to hurt somebody else that wants to get on or needs to get on the train, and things. I would
say a very empathetic.
Empathetic.
They really put themselves in everybody's shoes. I mean, even when you bump into somebody, there really isn't a reason to say excuse me for the most part.
Right.
They just kind of know it. You make eye contact. It's never angry.
Yeah.
There was only one occurrence in Asakusa, would you remember, when this dude just barreled through?
Yeah. I'm not.
But other than that, it's perfect. Which I'm not even.
The story's actually. We have to give this story credit because it was funny as crap when we were there. But we were in line for manju, and they were like fried manju. So to describe manju, I probably don't have it the most accurate, but. It was effectively fried mochi with a filling. And this place near Asakusa, which is a district that has the Tennoji Shrine, I think is what it's called. Really famous shrine in Tokyo.
Sounds right.
Right at the end there, near the shrine, the most crowded spot is this fucking manju place. And so we're in line, standing there. The line's kind of doing that thing that lines do in crowds, which is they aren't exactly straight. It isn't exactly a curve. We're kind of just snaking through the crowd. And Steve and I were at the jetty point, where on the left there was this little spot that people coming from behind us were getting stuck in and having to kind of cut through the line. And then on our right's kind of where everyone wants to be in the main crowd going back and forth. We're standing there in line, and everybody else is kind of coming up and, you know, maybe sticking a hand out to indicate they need to get through, nodding, saying, excuse me, whatever.
Polite.
Yeah. This one guy picks the spot when Steve and I are like 2 back from the fucking cash register. Like, we're in line. It's really going to be awkward to cut us right there. He picks that time to come up to Steve and try to make his way through. Doesn't say a word, doesn't look at either one of us, just pushes Steve like back to make room. And then he trips over not only Steve's feet, but the feet of the person in front of Steve, makes himself look like a fool. And we were like, that's the only rude person we've seen in Japan. But it was pretty fucking rude. So
yeah, it was just out of nowhere. And just like the way he did, he kind of put his arms up like he's marching and just kind of washer machine through.
Yeah.
Just
let's segue, because this is a good segue into talking about how the rules get overhyped. Because that was an example I think of, if you go on YouTube, and I think for a good reason, Japan gets really hyped up on YouTube as being this kind of different place to be in, great place to vacation. It's a different sort of society, especially to maybe people in the United States, somewhere else.
Yeah. Everybody's got a YouTube video.
Yeah. The rules, quote unquote, of Japan get extremely stressed in a lot of those videos. And I'll give you credit. I think if you're kind of like a tourist or an obvious tourist, it probably is a little different an expectation than, say, if you live there or you were there longer. But those videos would have you think that not only are the Japanese like the most polite people on earth, they will be literally offended and arrest you if you aren't polite. And that's not exactly true. And what I'm not saying is I'm not telling on myself. I think we were pretty well mannered because we were worried. But not everybody in Japan was exactly nice. And I think the point to make is people in Japan are polite. I think it goes back to that empathetic thing we were talking about. Yeah. They are polite. They're not necessarily nice. They will kind of push past you. They will kind of, I'll read it in a passive-aggressive way, kind of make their way around you if they want to be around you without saying anything, around talking. Openly aggressive? Absolutely not. Generally polite? Absolutely.
Yes.
But not necessarily nice. So take from that what you will. That being said, I think we ran into a lot of very nice Japanese people too.
We really did. And I did notice that, like, I know there was a big emphasis on, arigato gozaimasu. Yep. I finally say it right after I'm out of fucking Japan. But there were times where I would do that, and based on, let me toot my own little horn a little bit, but I was in martial arts, so bowing just comes naturally to me anyways. Like, I still bow at work and stuff, not like super deep, but enough that like people probably see it as a twitch.
Right.
So I would do that when I say that, and you would get a totally different reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, some of these people are like shocked, like, oh. And I don't know I think it was the mixture of them, but it was interesting because online they made it seem like you always say this. But every time we would say it, it was like this reaction, like, oh my, thank you.
Yeah. And so I had kind of two thoughts. One of them was a weird realization when we were there, which is that Americans are way nicer without being more polite. You know what I mean? Like, there's a certain enthusiasm.
Like, we're afraid to be dicks.
Exactly. So, like, even at, like, a fucking gas station, the expectation is the dude's going to be like, oh, thank you, hope you have a nice day. That guy probably doesn't mean it. That guy probably passively means it. He's just saying, I hope you don't have a fucked up day. It doesn't mean he really knows you or cares about you or wants to.
No.
Right? So I find, and this is, I think, more evident in Europe, no one's going to ask you how your day is going in a lot of places because they simply aren't that familiar with you. It's not that they want bad things to happen to you. They simply just, in a manner of speaking, which is probably discrediting, they just don't care.
It's not it's not part of their lexicon for friendly. Like, they don't feel like friendliness means asking about someone's day, which I love.
I think friendliness means it's just more authentic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I was at a store today and they said the same thing. Like, oh, we hope you have an amazing day. And in my head, I'm like, you don't care.
Yeah.
Like, all this conversation is not needed. I was sitting in line, and this register person was talking to everybody, right?
Yeah.
Just verbal diarrhea coming from the mouth of useless stuff. And all I could think is Japan was so efficient.
Right.
Here's the price. Here's the pay. Sometimes a thank you.
Yeah.
And if we thanked them, it was always a big eye, like, oh, wow, okay.
Right. And I think that kind of goes into the bowing thing, too, because I think you make a good point. Nobody The bow in Japan varies. And I think it varies because, it's kind of the same thing. If you go up to our fried manju stand back in Asakusa, the people there were friendly, they were polite.
Yeah.
They're not going to do like a full-on bow. Like, all you did was come up and be like, one, please pay the money, take it back. They're going to be like, thanks very much for your business, here you go, yada, yada, yada. It is very polite. But they're not going to do the whole, like, full rotation at the hips down to 90 degrees and back up. Now, they did do that when we were leaving, like, a nicer restaurant or a sit-down restaurant, or the hotels especially. There was a really deep bow from them to us. But for the most part, it's a head nod. You know what I mean? It's just kind of quick little head nod, a little bit of crimp at the shoulders or something like that. You do that 2 or 3 times. Arigato gozaimasu, thanks, stuff like that. And you're on your way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess that's a good point to call it out, because I think the politeness was really, really appreciated from a spot where it's like, I do appreciate people that are polite. I can understand why they may not necessarily be like authentically nice, which isn't to say that's how it was. But I will say, back home in the U.S., there's a lot of people that pretend to be nice and take no attention to their politeness, and it shows. And so it's just kind of like it's nice to have that politeness about that. So sort of the socialness, I guess, of the Japanese was nice. I think I really appreciated that. I think that's a really big call out for coming from other places, because you don't see it in other places like that, and maybe for good reason.
And I would say I only had one Japanese person who actually, like, after I purchased something from, they started talking to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I mean, it was nice, don't get me wrong. I think he was practicing his English because he wanted to talk in English, which I was like, cool. And we talked for, like only about 5 minutes or so. But even then was like, wow, this guy's totally different than the rest of Japan.
Yeah, it's a little bit different.
Nobody's interested in having a conversation.
Well, it came up a couple times. There was... we were eating, and I forget where we were eating now, but we were eating something, and I had kind of bumped my head. And I'll just be real. If you're like 5'8" and up, the country is a little bit short for you, which is great. In a lot of respects, it's not uncomfortable, but it's great because you can kind of tower around and say, "Oh, I'm the boss," stuff like that. But I
was big man for the first time ever.
We were eating. I just barely brushed my head on this kind of like overhang, because clearly it was, the owner is not as tall as I am. And I brushed my head, and the lady was like apologetic, and I'm just like, it's no big deal. I'm not bleeding or anything. I don't have a concussion. I literally just kind of, just brushed my head up against it. And so I was standing there kind of crouched over until this older woman came up in Japanese, was kind of pushing me back, so I wasn't under the overhang, stuff like that. So all in the spirit of politeness, but I think that kind of made this interesting sort of rapport with the person that I was getting the food from, because later on, I go back up and she was just like, was it good? In English. And, was it good? How'd you like it? I was like, oh, it was fantastic. Sorry if I broke anything, something like that. So, but the other one was this random old guy when we were outside the Kabuki theater in Ginza in Tokyo. And we just asked for a picture. And we didn't, let me say that back. We didn't ask for a picture. We were just taking pictures. He was just walking by. It's kind of this dapper looking old man, like tweed suit. And he just kind of looked at us and said, "Do you want your picture?" And we said, "Sure, yeah, no problem." And he proceeded to take like 19 pictures of us, and all of them were really good. But he put in a shit ton of effort doing that, and we were like, "That's a friendly fucking guy." So
yeah, jeez.
Yeah, so it definitely there. So politeness is up there. Sort of the social manners, I think, is it's nice. It's appreciated. I want to kind of asterisk this by saying, I really love to kind of go there and go like, oh, couldn't we have that in the U.S.? But I almost think it's better that it isn't that way, because it makes Japan what Japan is. And to export that isn't a bad thing, because you get more sort of humanity and goodness out of it. But to sit here and be like, I want the U.S. to be that way, takes it away from Japan, who's actually making an effort to do that. It's a kind of diminishing the greener grass. By just saying we should do that kind of thing.
Japan definitely seems to have from an outsider's point of view, and I know it's not like this because I don't know much about their politics or their actual. This is a week worth, but they seem to have everybody on the same page. What should be done? I mean, to the point of recycling. Every trash can we went to had at least 2 bins, sometimes as many as 4.
Yeah, separating
everything. And I got to tell you right now, I've walked by trash cans today.
Yeah.
And there was stuff on the floor next to them. The trash can wasn't full.
Yeah.
And it's like, That brings me to another thing. I mean, we were warned constantly, you're never going to find a trash can. Found plenty.
Yeah.
Found plenty.
Oh, it's overstated, because I would say there's less than you would get in Japan, in the U.S., right? Like, you don't really appreciate it, but trash cans are everywhere out here. But to your point, they're usually overflowing or untended, or people knock them over, whatever, right? In Japan, there's trash cans at pretty much every train station. And if you're like, I think we were as tourists, you're going to be going through a train station at least every couple of hours. And that undersays it, because you can throw your trash away in the restaurants you eat in. You know, if you get something from 7-Eleven, you just go back into that 7-Eleven and you throw away your shit there. Things like that.
Every convenience store had trash. I mean, it was not as difficult as they made it seem out to be. Like, they're like, you're going to need a bag at all times. Yeah. I'm like, there were a couple stupid moments where I put a wet wipe in my back pocket. Next thing you know, I got a soggy butt. But that was like once, and then I learned my lesson.
Yeah, we ended up with these. We didn't really think about it, but we ended up with these skewers. We had eaten something off of a stick, and we walked away without throwing them away. So we got stuck holding these skewers as we were sort of navigating through crowds and other shit until we found something. But we did find something eventually. Like, it's not a bad idea.
Just vampire hunters.
If you were farther out, like you were outside the city, maybe it's more difficult. And to their credit, like, we didn't go like so far outside the cities that we really would be able to say. I'm going to imagine it's that way. But it's not like there's no trash cans in the city. In the cities and in Japan generally. Like, people throw away their trash, they sort it, they keep it clean. But to this point is another thing that got hyped up on YouTube, is the lack of credit card acceptance in Japan.
Also BS, right?
Total BS. And I want to say there's more cash in play in Japan. Unlike, if you go to the US, pretty much everybody that has a cash register set up, your mom and pop shop, your food truck, your hot dog stand, everybody buys a cash register from a place that also does credit card shit. So you automatically have credit cards. So there's almost nowhere in the U.S. that you can't use credit cards. There are places that are cash only, but that makes more people, I think, question, like, why is it cash only? Why don't you take cards? So in Japan, there's places that are cash free, but a lot of them take card. Surprisingly large amount of them. So I again, credit to everyone that's giving fair warning to people that might expect you could just pay with card everywhere. That's not totally true in Japan, but it's way more than it comes across. 100%.
Absolutely. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I used cash a lot, but there were most of the sit-down restaurants and bigger places definitely had the card. I mean, the little stuff you'll need, but you definitely you don't need to bring all of your money in cash.
Absolutely. Don't. I think the other thing to point out tier 2 is this doesn't apply to the vending machines, which are literally everywhere.
Everywhere.
If you thought Starbucks was on every corner, go to Japan and just start tallying where you're seeing vending machines, because there's at least one vending machine per block, and that's probably way lower than it actually is. It's 2 to 4 to 5 per block.
I mean, like, I don't think any restaurant we went to me, at least, had enough water.
Yeah.
Like, whenever we went to sit down somewhere, never had enough water. Sure. So, like, those vending machines are perfect for getting water.
Yep.
I don't know where they drink their water. I mean, that's all I can figure is it must be the vending machines. It felt like maybe 8 ounces of water whenever you went in there.
Well, the big things in the vending machines were coffee, which is what we hit on when we were out there. And we said, yeah, coffee's nice, but what about the other shit? But there's a shit ton of fucking, like, sports drinks and, like, knock-on sports drinks, water or water-adjacent stuff. And then other things like cigarettes. We found, like, they're fewer in number, but we found just a couple, like, beer and sake vending machines, which isn't to say they don't exist, but we were only looking for one.
Recharge machine! That thing was intense. Yeah. That rabbit with grinding his teeth.
Lifeguard!
Energy. Lifeguard, check me up. I will get you hyped.
I'm a little bit regretful we didn't try it and see exactly what Lifeguard brought to the table. But I agree. Those vending machines are everywhere. They almost exclusively take cash. I didn't see one that did card, but there were plenty that take the IC card. Yeah. So if you have an IC card, it's not cashless, but it is kind of cashless. So it works that way too. It's great. Yeah. And I mean, you could live off of vending machines, if I'm being honest. Like, there's plenty of vending machines around. If you're ever dehydrated in Japan, you're at fault. You can find drinks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everywhere.
plenty. I mean, you can't walk more than a block without another vending machine. Even when we were, what do you call it? Training. When we were taking the train through like the country, I would see them like on corners
everywhere.
Everywhere.
You'd be passing by on the train. You'd look out, and for the most part, it's sort of built up along the railroad tracks. Which I should say it the opposite way. The train tracks go through populated areas more than say rural areas. But you'd look out, and not only would you appreciate the natural beauty that is Japan, which was just staggering at some spots, but you'd see just these empty roads or bus stations, very sort of Ghibli-esque, that were just on their own, and there'd be 2 or 3 vending machines there.
Yeah, always.
It was fantastic.
I saw, on the last day there, I finally saw somebody actually restocking.
Yeah, yep.
And it was impressive. They come up with a couple crates, they open it up, they throw it in there, and they leave.
Yeah.
Very quick.
It was great. Yeah. So, natural beauty, another high point. We get to see Fuji during our time in Hakone, but that also took us through smaller Japanese mountains up by the lake there and along the ocean. Beautiful country. In fact, there's that Shinkansen leg between, we got off at Odawara Station, and I kind of forgot what city it was because I thought it was so pretty. I wrote it down, but now I can't remember what it is. But it's like surrounded by mountains, the it's the eastern side of Japan, sort of southeast of Tokyo, or just south of Tokyo. Gorgeous. Very beautiful. We went before the leaves had fully changed, and it was absolutely gorgeous. It would be fine at the height of summer, definitely during the spring. All sorts of things. And they absolutely got that whole beach to forest within like 20 minutes thing. Because you'll be passing by and you'll just be like, the beach is right there, turn around, you're in the mountains in no time. It's gorgeous. It's an absolutely really gorgeous country.
Out of 10 stars, at least 1.
At least 1, definitely. So Japan has our recommendation. If you want us to say not waste your time and give you a good appraisal of your time in Japan, definitely take some cash. Definitely bring a trash bag. Don't worry too much. And the other thing, everybody speaks English. I always feel bad going to countries where I don't speak the language enough to be confident and speak. We got through every conversation out there, and we don't speak Japanese. A lot of pointing, nodding, yes and no's, things like that. But
the massage one was a little awkward because she didn't speak very good English, so I was doing the translator, which also works very well. Google Translate, very nice. But there was a mistranslation where I thought I was supposed to take my shirt off, and I guess I wasn't. And she started panicking. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can put it back on. I ended up getting covered by like 4 towels.
Hold up, yep.
Like, okay.
Well, I had that same thing in that taxi cab in that morning in Tokyo.
Oh, yeah.
So I blame myself, and I'll be honest, I can accept responsibility. We get into the taxi, and we had just finished saying, don't touch the fucking doors. Okay, they open them. It's part of their thing. We finished our taxi ride, and our driver, she spoke a little English, not a ton. Okay, that's really more my issue than it is her issue, right? So it was on us to understand what she was saying, and I didn't understand. But we had stopped, and she had sort of motioned down where we were supposed to get out, and I said, nodded, say, "Oh yeah, no, this looks really good." We said, "Thanks very much." I was waiting for her to open the door, but she kept motioning at the door. Now, I truly don't fully understand what she was saying, but it wasn't open the door because I leaned over and hit the door and it opened, and she looked at me and not mad, like very nice, said, "Oh, okay," gets out, runs around, and then opens the door, and I was like, I just fucked up. Like I should have.
This is the time.
I should have just kept nodding and said, "Yeah, no, this looks great." If it had been awkward, that would have been okay, but at least I wouldn't have offended someone by touching the door. So that's the travel tip. Don't touch the doors on taxis in Japan. They'll get them for you. But
yeah, they got you.
It was great. But the only other, let me think. I don't think I had really any other awkward interactions in Japan. Generally, everyone's, like I said, very polite. So it doesn't seem like everybody's very welcoming. So you just feel stupid that you don't speak enough Japanese. But at the same time, they don't seem to make it too much of a problem, and the English proficiency was incredibly high, generally speaking. Yeah. So go out and learn your Japanese. You'll feel better about it, and so will they. But if you don't, it's not like you can't get around. So.
No, it's pretty easy.
Yep.
On that note, I do want to publicly say thanks for inviting me to go with you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was a fun trip. I think we all had a good time. I'd really recommend. Let's talk about real quick, bathing naked in public?
My name is Steve.
My name is Pete. And this is PnS Waste Your Time. Japan special.
PnS Waste Your Time is a production of Pete and Steve. All characters and events in the show are entirely fictional, and any resemblance to any real people are entirely coincidental.
Arigato gozaimasu!